I'm Jenn. I'm an alcoholic. And I'd like to thank John. John, thank you for asking me to share. So I should tell you, my sobriety date is July 20th, 2005. I have a sponsor. She's often not very nice. And I have a home group. And I also sponsor people. So that's out of the way. Okay. I came from a home that was broken. My mother, it was a single mother house, and she didn't have any money, and I was a latchkey kid. And I tell you that because none of that made me an alcoholic. The thing that makes me an alcoholic is that my body reacts differently when I put alcohol in my system. And those situations, how I grew up, it made alcohol appealing, but it didn't make me an alcoholic. The first drink I took was when I was, I think, about 14, maybe 13. 13. And I was the only one out of my 3 other friends that got drunk. And I'll tell you the facts about that night. The facts are, I lied about where I was going. My mom didn't know I was going out to get drunk. I stole someone else's alcohol. I did not have permission to drink it. And then I made those 3 other friends responsible for my drunk ass. And they did not volunteer to do that. Now, on the way home that night, my boyfriend was basically carrying me home. And I looked at him and I said, "Wow, wasn't that great?" And he looked at me because he had seen the facts, but I was having an experience. He looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, how about we just don't ever do that again?" And I knew what that guy meant. He meant I should never do that again. And immediately in my head, I thought, what a loser. Because I knew I was going to be doing that again. Now, I always say this, I tell this story because he went on to Princeton on full academic scholarship, and I ended up here. So even then, I had that curious mental twist, right? I couldn't differentiate the true from the false, even at that time. I was a chance drinker. I drank every chance I got. There were lots of times where I spent my evenings down at the bridge in the forest, and some of that time was a lot of fun. When I was about 16, I went on a trip with my dad, and I got really drunk, and the next day he looked at me and said, "Jen, for you, 1's too many and 100's not enough." And I knew exactly what he was talking about. Exactly. I managed to pull my stuff together, keep it together. I lived at home. I went to university, drank on the weekends, and then graduated university and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I called my brother. My brother is 14 years older than me, and he's like an adult. Like, he is just a grown-up, is the best word I can say. And I said to him, I think I might want to be a teacher. And he was really surprised. He was like, "Well, I didn't even know you liked kids. Why, you didn't babysit mine. Why do you want to be a teacher?" And I said, the benefits are good. I get paid well, summers. And he's like, "Oh, okay, maybe before you spend some more money on school, you should see whether or not you like to teach." And I tell this story because then a week later I was living in Japan. And years later he was like, "I thought you were just going to volunteer down the road. I didn't know you were going to go all the way there." But in Japan, that was when I would really, I had rules of what made you an alcoholic. If you drank alone, you were an alcoholic. If you drank and you drove, you were an alcoholic. And in Japan, I would break every single one of my rules, and I would justify and rationalize them. I remember Yeah, it's hard because in Japan I was living alone, so that's difficult when you want to drink, but you live alone. But your rule is if you drink alone, you're an alcoholic. So I bought a hamster and called it social drinking. I started dating a guy, and my relationships when I was drinking, always very complicated. You know, he had a girlfriend, so it was hard. We could only meet at night, and but most of the time I was drunk at night. Well, most of the time anyways, I was drunk. So I ended up driving while I was drunk in Japan, which is really difficult because they already drive on the wrong side of the road to me. And anyway, so it was horrible. But after that incident, I had met this guy the first day that I was in Japan, and I had met him and I had said, we were hanging out and he was really cool, and I didn't really know why we were talking. At that point, my relationships with men were like either they were buying me stuff or we were sleeping together. So this was new, like we were just talking, going for coffees. And so I ended up calling him the next day and saying to him, I could have a problem with alcohol because drinking and driving really scared the shit out of me. And he said, well, when you drink, do you ever feel guilt, shame, and remorse the next day? And I said, well, yeah, that's why I'm talking to you. And he goes, and do you feel like sometimes you act differently when you're drunk than you would if you were sober? And I'm like, again, Brian, that's why I'm talking to you. And he was like, and do you feel like once you take one drink, oftentimes you can't stop yourself from taking more drinks? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you could be an alcoholic. Do you want to go to an AA meeting? I'm 10 years sober. And this is a prime example of where God was working in my life when I didn't know there was a God and I wasn't ready. And so my answer to Brian at that point was, no, I don't want to go to a meeting. I'm just telling you I could have a problem. And he said, he was so good. Like he had read, it was obvious he knew what to do. He shared a bit of his experience. He 12-stepped me and he said, I think you're really brave. I think you're really brave just for having this conversation. And let's keep in touch. And I'm around all the time. And so I left Japan. I found out I wanted to teach. So I came home, and I had done so deplorably in my BA, like in my undergraduate program, because I was busy, not studying. And so I couldn't get into any of the teachers' colleges in Ontario. So my mom was like, well, there's a program in the States. I'm like, nope, Australia it is. So I moved. I couldn't get away fast enough because I had that sense of freedom, in Japan, although some really terrible things happened. I also in Japan felt like I had arrived. I had my own little, apartment. It was the size of a shoebox, but it was mine. And I had this wine rack that was perpetually empty, but it was my wine rack, And so when I had to get away from my house, so I moved to Australia. And, I can tell you my last drunk, I went out, I was in Sydney, and I went out and I got really drunk. And I woke up and I had a big hangover and I had missed a flight and I, felt terrible, but I didn't wake up next to anybody because that's really awkward when you don't know their name. But it wasn't one of the terrible times, and, I'm describing the circumstances, but that's not bottom. Bottom isn't a place. Bottom is a state of mind. So here's how I was thinking. I wanted to die. I did not want to live anymore. I couldn't imagine living one more day in my skin. And I felt like everybody who saw me was looking into my soul and knew that I was lower than whale shit. I really felt that. And at that point, I decided I was going to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. So I flew back to Brisbane, where I was living, and I reached out to my old friend Brian from Japan, and I told him I might look at going to a meeting. He responded with, that's awesome, good for you, and, if you're really serious about staying sober, you should probably look at getting a sponsor as well, and somebody will take you through the steps. I wasn't sure, but I was like, all right. I was really scared. And so I went to my first AA meeting, and it was not like this. There were, 7 people in the room. They were all nearly dead. Every single one of them. I was 25. Anything over 30 wasn't worth it. So I thought, I don't know if this is going to work for me. Anyways, I sat there, and they said, let's look for the similarities and not the differences. And I, of course, saw all the differences. And the thing that got me, though, was at the very end, when it was time to say goodbye to them. The meeting had ended. This old guy, Bob, I later called, how we have nicknames for people? Like Short Jen. I called him Creepy Bob. But because he was being nice to me, and I wasn't used to that, So he said to me, looked at me, and he said, please keep coming back. We need you. You're in the right place. And that was the first time in a very long time that I had heard somebody tell me to come back. And I felt really good. So I went skipping home, and I had in my back of my head that I needed a sponsor. And there was this lady at that first meeting, who spoke, and she was so timid and shy, and I thought, she's the one for me. She almost reminded me of a bird. She sounded so and it sounded like she was going to cry all the time, and I was like, oh yes, this one, I think we're going to have fun. And so the next meeting that we went to, I asked her to be my sponsor in her car. She drove me home. Oh, Creepy Bob wanted to drive me home, but I said no. So he got her to drive me home. And I went, and I asked her in my car, I said, or in her car, I said, can you be my sponsor? And she said, oh, I would be so delighted. I'm so honored. And I said, okay. And then any bird-like quality went flying out the window, and she became an AA Nazi. I'm telling you, that woman tricked me. So I went to lots of meetings. I went to a boatload of meetings, and after a few months, I started to feel good. I'm around people who want me to come back, and they're smiling, and, AA people, right? So, I'm starting to feel good. So now I'm starting to think of my other problems. I need a man. I need a rich man to pay off my debt. So I start scanning the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I find this old-timer. He's got 6 months, so I'm feeling really secure. And so I said to him, I said to my sponsor, actually, I'd already sort of planted some seeds. We were going out on little dates. And so then I happened to mention it to my sponsor, and she said, I thought she was going to say congratulations. I could not be any more wrong. She said, is it worth your life? And I thought that was really dramatic. But here's the thing. I was so scared about going back to that mental state that I was in. I didn't think it was going to kill me, but I did feel like I could go back to where I was thinking right before I came into AA. So it scared me enough to keep me from pursuing that relationship. But then I want to ask some questions, like, why do they say it's a year before you get into a relationship? And her answer was, and it's the best answer, I can't wait to use it on a sponsee. She was like, actually, you should be sober for about 5 years, but we never say that because we know nobody is able to make it. So we say a year and we hope for the best. We hope you're grounded enough. I was like, okay. So I moved back to Oakville, which is where I'm from, after I graduated. I did get sober in Australia on, like I said, July 20th, 2005. And it was during getting my master's to teach. And I came back here, and I was still not well. Like, it was weird. I thought once I quit drinking, I thought drinking was the problem. So once I quit drinking, my life will fall into place. And initially, it felt like it did. I was surrounded by lots of kind people. I was being productive. I was getting my homework. Oh, okay. So I remember I used to write, like, my essays in blackouts. So I don't remember it, but I remember getting the marks. I did not do well when I did that. I thought I could be like Stephen King, you know, how he wrote Cujo in a blackout. No, not me. I wrote like C- papers. So when I got sober, I was doing really well. But eventually, reality started to creep in. One of my first sponsors said, reality is really painful when you're only visiting. And she had me. All my sponsors, very mean. But she had me nailed. And that's exactly, you know, I was up here where only the dogs could hear me, or down here. And that's where I lived my life. I had 2 or 3 feelings: mad, sad, or happy, happy, happy. And those were the only range of emotions I had for a long time when I came to AA. So when I came to Oakville, my sponsor in Australia told me that I had to get a sponsor. And of course, Oakville did not do things right, not like Australia. And so I took a lot of time to try and find somebody. I found a good sponsor in Oakville finally. And I love the slogan, keep coming back, because it's like literally the only thing I've done right my entire sobriety. Like I've 13th stepped people. I've not gone to meetings for a long time. I've changed home groups. Like, I'm at Simple Actions, honestly, because I've been a member at every other home group. So now I'm just like branching out to online. And the only thing, but actually I haven't stolen the 7th, so that's okay. I haven't done that yet. But I just keep coming back, and I've managed to string together this period of time. And through this period of time, I've gone through the steps. And every time, the magic here is that every time I go through the steps, in my experience, I have had amazing things happen to me. Once I went through them, I went back. I stay in 10, 11. I live in steps 10, 11, 12. But every few months, it seems like I'm going back through the book, and I'm doing the work again, and I'm getting amazing results. So let me tell you a little bit about what it's like today. I ended up actually meeting my husband. I did end up marrying. He's not wealthy, and he's not in AA, so, But he's kind and loving and practices spiritual principles, and he's just an amazing man. The other week I was giving him shit for not shoveling the driveway, and then like last night one of my twins was throwing up, and he, like a champ, cleaned it all up. And when we got in bed last night, I was like, you know what, you are indispensable. Like, I cannot do this without you. So you have those little moments where God shows you, exactly what you need to see. Anyways, I did end up getting married, and I met him when I was 5 years sober. The joke was on me. And we had a child, and then we thought, why wouldn't we have another one, after a couple years. It took me a couple years to start liking him again, but once that happened, then I was like, let's have another child. We had another child, but surprise, twins. And, I had some really, it's amazing because if you stay in AA long enough and you just live your life, you will run up, and it's like, I can't even tell you how exciting it is when I recognize a flawed idea. And I had all kinds of flawed ideas. Like, I had a flawed idea, I'd have 2 children. And then I got 3. And I was like, let's do some work around that. And I had to really start accepting the minivan, and it was awful. And then I had a flawed idea that all my children were going to be perfectly healthy. And then one of them has autism. Oh, okay. I had to deal with a lot of resentment. God, why are you giving me somebody with autism? I only wanted 2, and now I have 3. And this is awful. And lucky for me, I had done the work in AA. I had people around me that I could talk to, that I could reach out and call. Some of them are sitting in this room, actually. And I worked through those moments. And some of them were really hard. I had a flawed idea that when my mom got older, she was going to live with me and my family, and I was going to take care of her just like she took care of her mom. But then she got dementia. Oh, this isn't great. I had a flawed idea. I went to teacher's college. I got a job. I thought I was going to be a teacher for the rest of my life. And for the last 5 years, I've absolutely hated teaching. I haven't been successful. I've been going on stress leaves or mental health leaves. It's been awful. And I didn't know. My sponsor always says that your worst news is also my best news. And that is that I'm powerless. And I see that. I feel that now. It's something I couldn't feel at 25, but it's something I desperately feel at 43. My mother's actually calling me right now. She can't remember that I'm speaking. So, and we have to laugh at these things. We have to, because otherwise it would be very sad. So she, I had this, I'll tell you, I had this dream when I don't tell very many people this, but you're my closest 200 friends. You'll be good. When I was younger, I wanted to be an actress. And, but then I got drinking. And so when it came time to, join the drama club, find a community theater, I was busy. And I didn't have a lot of time for that. So I didn't get into it, and I didn't pursue it. And, and then I got into teaching, which is kind of like acting, really. I have, or being a clown. I don't know, a little bit of both. But anyways, it wasn't working for the teaching. And so I always had this idea that I wanted to act. Or I wanted to be in the film industry. It's always something that I've been interested in. So about 9 years ago, my dog died, and my husband wanted to get a Labrador Retriever. I don't know how many people here have a Labrador Retriever. They are not trained in 6 months, I can tell you. I was pregnant 3 years, 5. I was pregnant, and I thought, I'll just get this puppy trained, and then we'll be good. And it was awful. And so I wanted to rehome the dog, and I said and by the way, guys, I'll sort of ruin it here for you. I'm telling you this story so that you can see in my life where God's working for me, even though I don't know that He's working for me. And I think it's the worst possible scenario. So I have a infant at home, and I have this crazy animal, and I'm by myself, and I'm losing it. And I said to my husband, we have to rehome her. And he said, we can't. She's part of the family. And I said, I might not be part of the family soon if we don't do something. And so we agreed to train the dog. So I went in and I trained, and I knew this trainer was the cheapest, so I felt only the best for Skeeter. Cheapest trainer, and I was like, yes, she's good. And she, was not treat-based. She was, whatever, balance training. And so I started training with her, and I loved it. Now, 17 years ago, if you told me you're going to love training dogs, I'd be like, no. So anyways, I love training. I did all of her courses. Skeeter is like a working dog now, a certified working dog. She's amazing. But something I didn't know about my trainer is that she works in film. And she basically animal wrangles in the film industry. And so she started to use my dog in film work. Right? Is everybody going like, this is weird? And because I was when it was happening. So, and then we became friends, because when I was there 4 times a week, so we became friends over this period of 9 years. And she knows what's happening at the school, and she said, why don't you just come work for me? And I was like, oh, well, let me hold on, because I know better now. I'm like, I got to ask my sponsor. I got to just see. So I call my sponsor, and I tell her what's happened. Oh, and I was like, well, I could work for you, but I'd have to make so much money a month, otherwise I lose my house. And she said, yeah, I'll pay you triple that. What? So I called my sponsor, and I said, I don't know, this happened, and I got this job offer. And she was like, yeah, you've been miserable for 3 years. This is God knocking at your door. Open the damn door. And so I said, okay. So, and I was able to navigate my change of careers in a grown-up way. Here's the thing. I'm still working as a teacher right now. I'm going to finish off the year. Didn't have to, I'm out of here, assholes. I didn't have to do any of that, I'm going to finish off the year. And then I did something really grown up that my brother would be so proud of me. I applied for a leave of absence. So I didn't quit. I just am going to take a leave, and I'm going to try the whole animal wrangling, see how that all works out. And if I want, I can always go back. What a difference. I can't believe it. When I'm following God's will, things seem to go easier. But one of the other flawed ideas that I had, and it was about God, was that if I do everything right, if I sponsor 5 people, if I go through the book 3 times a year, if I go to every meeting every night, I will always get the good parking spot. I will just float around in life. And that has not been the case. But something that I've come to see is that when I'm fighting the results, or when I'm fighting God's will, I'm in pain. I had no idea I was so extravagant with my pain, but I am. And when I'm able to sit back and let things go the way they're supposed to go, the way that God has it, my universe couldn't be better. Things couldn't have gotten better. So what's life like today? It's hard. There are days where I'm trudging. It's all uphill. Yeah. But I know I am on the road of happy destiny. I can come here. I can share with everybody. And I can see, this is sort of what's nice. For people who are new, you don't have this yet. But once you get a little bit of time, you can start seeing where God has worked in your favor. And, if you have a good sponsor and you're talking, I should say this, if you're talking to your sponsor. See, some people are like, oh, I don't pick up the phone. I can't pick up the phone. I was like, I thought that was my sponsor's job, was to answer my call anytime I called, and would be sort of upset if she didn't answer. She had work, but I didn't. She had to sleep, not me. I was up at 2 a.m. I could sleep all till the afternoon. But anyways, if you're talking to your sponsor and you've got a sponsor who's working the steps with you, they're able to show you, at least my sponsor did, where God was working in my life. I had my very first sponsor was when I got into my teaching career. I had a principal give me an evaluation, and I called my sponsor. I ran out to my car and I called my sponsor and I said, "Oh my God, I got the best evaluation. Like, this guy my principal just gave me, like, he sung my praises. I read it to her and I said, if only he knew." And she goes, "He does know. He knows you today. And this is what you're showing him today." I think God is calling somebody. Pick up. But, anyways, we were just my friend and I were just talking about, the vehicles how we get to God. And, here's how I got to God. And I don't know if it's going to work for you guys. I know it worked for me. I got to God by coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, getting a sponsor, talking to the people in AA, doing what my sponsor told me to do, working the steps, praying even when I didn't want to pray. I'll tell you my first honest prayer. Sarah's like, "I know that." My very first honest prayer, because my sponsor was big on like honest prayer. I thought, well, what else would I do? But it turns out I lied quite a bit. So I had, I'm trying to think. One of my my mentor teachers were really bothering me. And I remember crying and saying, "Please, God, please kill her. And then she didn't show up the next day. And I was like, "What happened to Susan?" Like in the staff room. And they're like, "Oh, she just has an appointment." I'm like, "Oh, thank God." But listen, I kept coming back. I don't have to pray those prayers anymore. I get to pray for God's will, because I know that God's will is infinitely greater than mine. And I know that he has a way bigger picture than I have, and anytime, and I learned this on my 5th step. I just recently completed a 5th. And, anytime I'm putting my happiness in the hands of other people, places, and things, I'm setting myself up for resentment. I almost hung up on her for that one. But, that's the truth. So, I hope my talk has, I don't know, maybe you guys all get drunk, but I'll stay sober tonight. And really, that's all I care about. No. I'll finish with a quote, because it's really amazing. But I have to forewarn everybody, I should have glasses. I'm 43. I should have reading glasses, but I'm just refusing, because I think it's going to make me look old. And so you'll see me, thank you, sir. You'll see me squinting, because this makes me look really young. But I'll end with this quote. Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps you can understand what he is doing. He is getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make any sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he is building quite a different house from the one you thought of. Throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. Thank you.